Okay, I think we'll get started. So thank you everybody for attending this, the latest in our Q1 series of Coffee Club Lives. Today we're going to be talking about optimizing the frontline communications with Microsoft Teams. I've got a couple of guests here. What we'll do is we'll cover as much as we can. We're keeping this as to a sort of a informal kind of panel discussion. But if you've got any questions along the way, if you'd like to throw them in the chat window, what we'll do is we'll try and get to them either during the conversation or come back to them at the end if we haven't quite managed to get through them all. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my two panelists today. I have Lee Essex from Tango Networks. Lee, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Thanks, Ian. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Always humbled and honoured to take part in these sessions. So again, thank you, Ian. I'm Lee Essex. I look after sales, strategic partners for Tango Networks. I'll leave it at that for now. And,
Brilliant. Thank you, Lee. Welcome back, by the way, because this is not your first rodeo with us, is it? So nice to have you back. And our very own Diana Floria. So Diana, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ian. Hi, everybody. Diana Flora, Technical Solutions Director at QIP. Part of my role, I work very closely with our sales team as sales engineering and pre-sales, and also product management. So recently, I've been working very closely with Lee and Tango on their Extend product.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, let's get into the juicy bits without further ado, shall we? So as I say, today we're going to be talking about optimizing those frontline worker communications. And I think to level set, and Lee, perhaps I'll throw this first question to you, and Diana, you can pick up at the end of that. Let's just, what do we mean by the term frontline workers?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I mean, it's a term that's been thrown out there, and I think during the pandemic, frontline worker and key worker kind of got blended, but they kind of cross over. The frontline worker is essentially an employee in an organization who deals with customers, suppliers, or partners. These are the people at the front line of the organization. They're the people that when they're engaging with a customer, and that could be a paying customer or perhaps a patient, these are the people that are really relaying the messages and dealing in real time. In the corporate area, these are the people that are the first people to convey any changes in messaging or any changes in policy. So they're the people who rely on that real-time communications. They are typically, by their nature, the people probably furthest away from the core of the business. So they do tend to get a little bit forgotten. But the key thing is, due to the nature of the role, frontline workers do require typically real-time communications. They need the ability to speak in real time at the highest quality, so they can talk to patients, customers, suppliers, or partners. They're typically deskless, so not typically at a desk. And what does that mean? They could be out in the community, they could be out roaming. So they've not got the communications that we've all been used to, a laptop app that I'm talking to on the moment, or perhaps a phone on the desk. So they are by their very nature reliant on a mobile device, something that they can pick up and take with them as part of their role.
Excellent. And Diana, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think Lee covered it very, very well, and I agree with him. When I think about frontline workers, I think about the pandemic, and I kind of associate the frontline workers with the people that could now work from home during the pandemic, the ones that are customer facing, they interact with the customers daily, they have to be there to do their job, like your drivers, the people that work in stores, in hospitals, and even your postman, for example. But since we're talking telephony and we're talking Microsoft Teams, I think it's important to also highlight what Microsoft defines a frontline worker. And I think from their point of view, a frontline worker is a person that does not work at their desk and from their laptop computer, but they work out of a mobile device like a telephone, a mobile phone, or a tablet. So they are not sat at their desk, as Lee said. And I think because of that, we can also include some other categories of workers. There are maybe knowledge workers like salespeople that are out and about, but they do work out of their mobile phone most of the time, or a lot of the time, but also manufacturing industries and distributions where there is big warehouses and manufacturers, places where users don't have a phone, don't have a desk. There may be are linked to a mobile device that they carry around with them, or there's certain phones around in the warehouse. But not every user has a phone.
So what, I mean, it's quite a broad spectrum that we're talking about in terms of the profile of users. And I think I read somewhere recently that about 80% of the world's workforce is classed as some form of frontline worker, which is quite immense, really. So it's really it's anybody that's not typically doing their work in front of a desktop. It's probably the easiest way of positioning it. So that's good for our audience to understand, because I'm sure they'll think through their organizations and think, okay, we've got those kind of users. So what are some of the challenges then with those kind of profiles that we've just sort of explained, with giving them sort of that communication connectivity? And Diana, perhaps I'll throw that one to yourself first.
Quite a few. So a few that come to mind is they maybe don't need a full-blown out solution in terms of telephony, right? They might not need the full app. They might not need the full scope of when we talk about Microsoft in general, Microsoft Teams, and organizations might not want to pay the full license. It gets quite expensive to pay a full license from Microsoft point of view for those frontline workers. If they don't need the whole Teams client, maybe they just need to make and receive calls. They need more basic functionality. I know Microsoft has thought about this recently, and they've released a less expensive solution and license for frontline workers that will help. So that is one of the challenges. The other bigger challenge is phones on desks. So if people are out and about, or if they're in the manufacturing industry and they're not having a desk, it doesn't justify for companies to invest in plastic on desks, on phones, for them to take and receive calls. The immediate solution to that will be, okay, well, they can use a mobile device and a Teams client installed on a mobile device, but that comes with a lot of responsibilities from an IT point of view to manage those devices, and also the cost, because companies don't always want to invest and buy mobile devices for all their employees. And bring your own device might also come with challenges because of the security requirements. So not every company out there allows employees to bring their own devices because of security reasons. And that happens more and more. Another thing, since I talked about manufacturing earlier, I think having desks on phones for the manufacturing industry, especially with the new IP phones, the feedback we received from the companies we're working with in this sector is that the new IP phones are maybe not loud enough, they're not robust enough maybe, and they do prefer to have mobile devices that they can carry around, they can have with them at all time, they can hear ringing at all time. And the days of actually have phones on desks for the manufacturing industries are probably gone.
Yeah, and I think as well, what we see a lot with those manufacturing industries is it's almost a common area phones rather than individual devices. So the shared sort of devices is another option, isn't it? Lee, is there anything you'd like to? I mean, I think Diana's covered a lot there, but
no, I think that Diana has covered it. I mean, what perhaps I'll add is, we are talking Teams here. We aren't talking Microsoft, and as you say, Microsoft have done a lot of research into this because they see it as an opportunity. If you listen to Jared Pareto, who's one of the CVPs, he said he wants to solve customers' problems, and I agree with that. I love that ethos from Microsoft. So they've identified that they think between 2 and 2.5 billion people are frontline workers. So, a huge amount of the workforce, as you said, Ian. And as Diana said, they've introduced a specific set of licenses. And I love the less expensive. It's cheaper, Diana, to be honest. But they've gone further recently. They've actually halved the price of the phone license for frontline workers. The phone typically is consumed as an E5. It's given away, and that's how most people like you and I consume our Teams phone license. It's part of our Microsoft Office 365 suite. Frontline workers don't typically need the full Office 365 suite, so Microsoft introduced the F series of license instead of the E. And the phone was a bolt-on. It was a bolt-on cost to that, and I believe it was $8, so around about £6 in real money. But they've halved that now. They've brought it right down to $4. So they recognise that frontline workers, the opportunity is huge. They also recognise that typically organizations don't like to spend that much money on frontline workers.
Yeah.
So they've lowered the barrier of entry from a financial aspect. But again, just to take that further, the very nature of the role is that people are out and about. So it's coverage. How do these people have good business quality coverage when they're out? They've not got business class or Wi-Fi available to them. Data signals on mobile are great if you're in an urban area, but once you get out to the more rural areas, you lose the solid data and you drop down to the edge of the mobile network. And even in some, very large built-up areas, I was in London over the past couple of days, and I was quite surprised at the lack of performance on the 5G that I got. So even in rather built-up areas, if there is a huge population there's a lot of people consuming that service. So data can't be relied on. So there's lots of challenges there to make sure that these frontline workers have got the best communications available to them at an appropriate cost.
I think I said in a previous webinar when we were together actually that the most important features that companies are trying to solve are the mobility, the good quality, the security, and to have a solution that is paid by the company and managed by the company rather than paid by the end user and managed by the end user. So definitely everything that you said, I fully agree. Yeah.
So I guess the next question is there's a need, there's a challenge, and it's stopping a few people from doing and migrating things forward. What are the solutions? So Lee, perhaps if you want to give us a little bit about the Tango solution, which we're pushing out and launching next week as our Mobile Connect.
Absolutely. Tango is all about empowering people with the best communication for voice. That's what we focus on. You sell the best quality voice with regards to your Operator Connect solution. So you're connecting people to the PSTN. What we do with Extend is we take that high quality voice out to the mobile network. And the key thing is that we are taking it out to the mobile network. So a Tango Extend eSIM, which is what you're launching next week with us, is actually integrated directly into the Teams environment. So that means it's that any identity that's given to a worker, a frontline worker within Teams, is then automatically extended out to the mobile device. So there's no additional numbers. If you've got a block of DDIs, you can assign them to your frontline workers. They install an eSIM onto their mobile phone, and it gives them the ability to make and receive calls at the best, highest quality. What people don't realize about the mobile network is they're still groomed to treat a native voice call over priority over data session. Voice has got to be real time. Data is packets that can be reassembled. So even if you've got very low coverage in a mobile network, and we've all been there, you get the little E symbol up on a mobile world, which actually means edge. You're on the very edge of the network, but you can still make and receive a good quality call. And the mobile networks will give a quality of service to that call because it's a priority. So, stood next to somebody trying to make a call over an app, you'll get a better class of quality. But by deploying an eSIM, a Tango Extend eSIM, you'll get the best of several worlds. You'll get the best of the power of Microsoft Teams Phone. You've got the ability to manage identities. You can route inbound calls. You can control outbound calls because all the calls made and received on our eSIM go out via the PSTN as if they're a standard call. So the administrator has the ability to control that, and that gives us several things. Number one, it's a known identity. Frontline workers typically would probably use a mobile phone, which is a mobile number, which is it's not recognized. It's not a brand identity. And when we start to talk about the health sector, it's important that people are using recognized numbers, so that they answer the phone and when they call them back. But by making sure that all calls are anchored within Teams, it gives the organization, whether that's a health authority or a profit organization, the ability to control those calls. If they want to layer on additional services like call recording, the call's already in Teams, so it can be done. If they want to layer on reporting, and obviously we've got to mention AI. We can't just have a conversation without mentioning AI. So if they want to layer on some sort of AI to monitor the calls, they can do that. And typically they wouldn't have done that with frontline workers, because it would have been a cheap mobile phone or something like that, which is a siloed communication. And it's kind of fine, it's best efforts, but it's a terrible experience for the worker. It's typically their personal mobile number, and they don't want to make and receive calls on their personal number. It's bad for the organization because they lose control of that communication. And at the end of the day, it's a bad customer experience because it's not a recognized number for them coming back. So we feel, and so do Microsoft, that Tango Extend is the perfect fit for the frontline workers. It's cost effective, it's easy to deploy, it's easy to manage, and then more importantly, it's easy to use. And I was speaking yesterday at an event, and I say for things to be successful, they've got to be two things. They've got to be accessible and they've got to be scalable. And that's the key thing. We spend a lot of time working with you to make sure that the product is accessible to your channel partners and their customers, but it's scalable and easy to use.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to add to this, and maybe I'm stealing your thunder, Diana, so apologies, but I think it's the security aspect, because I think that's another pillar that particularly an enterprise needs to consider is if you've got the option of providing that expensive work phone, but now you've got an option of providing a business controlled means of communicating on a personal device without compromising the security aspects, which I think is quite key.
For sure. While the solution is still paid by the organization and maintained by the organization, and you as a user don't have to do much, and it's good for you too, because when you receive a call, you know where you receive the call from. You receive it from somebody in your company, you receive it on your business number rather than receiving it on your personal number. It's a clear distinction between the two, so you know how to answer the call. You know if it's your colleague calling or your customer calling, or if it is your kids calling or something like that. So, yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
And that's, sorry, Dan. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's a key thing, it's an experience. Most people probably don't realize, but the last 4 or 5 generations of smartphone have all supported eSIM. We're all used to getting a little bit of plastic, we put in our phones, and that's generally what we do. But in the background, most phones, have the ability to add an eSIM to them. It's already there. You've not got to go out and buy a new SIM. And the developers of the operating systems, iOS, Apple, and Android, and Samsung, and those guys have spent a lot of time making sure that this dual SIM, this dual line experience is very nice, it's clear. So people can clearly separate their work identities from their personal identities. So going back to that, Diana, having a single phone and knowing who's calling you, what line they're calling you on, and when you're calling them back, you're presenting the number, is essential. And again, it's accessible. And a lot of the hard work has been done for us by the clever folks at Apple and Samsung and Google. So the user experience is really, really nice. And the technologies, it's already there. Again, it's accessible.
You didn't ask my thunder earlier, Ian. I wanted actually to take the conversation in a completely different direction for a tiny bit. In terms of solutions, so I know we talked about the Extend solution and how that works for the workers and for the mobile workers out there. I wanted to touch base a bit on the manufacturing industry. I know I keep going back to that, but it's something that we work with a lot, and it's something that we see a lot of requirements for. There's a few different solutions there to deal with the phones on desk situation or replacing the current analog devices that are on desk. So when customers want to migrate from the legacy analog devices, there are a few options. Either maybe they don't want to invest the time or the money in actually replacing them, but they want to move to Teams and integrate those to Teams. The solution would be use an ATA or an analog gateway, something for us to kind of continue working with those frontline workers in the manufacturing, but still have them integrated with Teams. In many cases, customers want to get rid of those old analog phones and the analog solution. So the options are replace them with IP phones, I mentioned earlier. Some customers out there, the feedback is they're great, but maybe they're not robust enough. Those touch screens are not really working when you're wearing thick gloves and stuff, or yeah, they're not maybe loud enough. Also, there are challenges when in certain warehouses, big warehouses, there might not be wiring for those IP phones, so they cannot really install them everywhere. Wi-Fi phones is also an option, but there are not so many available out there, and also Wi-Fi coverage is sometimes patchy. So that's why even in the manufacturing industry, although there's all these solutions where keep your existing analog or use IP phones or use Wi-Fi phones, think outside of the box and think about, well, what about using mobile devices with Tango Extend or mobile option where the users can just carry mobile devices with them, can hear their phones, can take and receive calls anytime they want. They have either Wi-Fi coverage or network coverage during that time. So I think it's a perfect solution for that industry too.
Yeah, I mean, from what we're covering here, I think it's great. What you make a very valid point in the fact that not everybody will want to go down that sort of mobile first, or may not be able to go down that sort of mobile led. So there is an option for keeping certain users on legacy equipment, for example. So you're looking at the profiles of the users that you've got within your base and which ones, okay, we don't have to expend expensive give them mobile apps or give them mobiles. We can give the sort of Extend or the Mobile Connect type solution. But then these type of users actually, they don't need sort of enterprise connectivity, as it were, but we still need them to be contactable. And we see, I know, Diana, and you've done a lot of work on this, that sort of the connections to analog devices and sort of radio devices and other legacy systems, which the company or the customer may not be ready to get rid of, but still want to incorporate into that single Teams environment. So it's a very valid point for the adding a connectivity point for the frontline workers, as we've described them as. So that's interesting. So I mean, I think we've already covered this a little bit, but when we're talking about sort of team-centric type solutions here, is there any limitations in what they're available on, or is it? I mean, can they be used with Operator Connect and direct routing, being the main ones?
I can take this one. So I think we talked about two different solutions: the Tango Extend solution, and we talked about the analog devices integration using analog gateways or ATAs. Both work with direct routing and Operator Connect, so they work in both scenarios. They do not work with calling plans, and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the calling plan situation is different when it comes to Tango.
Yeah. I mean, Microsoft have reserved the right that they want to keep their calling plans to themselves. It's the point that Microsoft are speaking to, and we're talking to them. But what we're talking about here is actually it's your partners, your customers. So it's the ability to activate Operator Connect and direct routing. That's the majority of it. So we'll leave Microsoft to themselves for the time being.
Well, I think when you look at the stats, and Microsoft won't, they'll agree with these anyway. But I think the bigger proportion of deployments are with direct routing and Operator Connect, and that's where they seem to see most of the deployments going. So I don't think we're upsetting them at all by saying that they don't work with calling plans. I think there's a plenty share. But it does bring me to a point, Lee. We're talking about a sort of a mobile-led type solution. How does it compare with Teams Phone Mobile? I mean, they're quite different things, aren't they?
They are. Teams Phone Mobile is one of Microsoft's strategic plays. Microsoft, if I look at the UC vendors, are probably leading the way on strategy on mobile first. They're working with ourselves. They're working directly with mobile operators. There's a couple of key differences with regards to Tango Extend and Teams Phone Mobile. Now, Teams Phone Mobile is all about bringing a mobile identity into the Teams environment. So in the UK, that's fairly simple. It's an 07 number. which is kind of fine for some people. If I'm a busy rep and, I like people to have my personal number, I'm a trader, I like people to have my 07 number because it's that personal service, which is fine. But I think when we look at what we want for a frontline worker, a general worker, it's that 01, that 02, that 03 number. It's that known identity, that brand identity, that trusted number. And it may be a range that a company owns, but it's the ability to have that known identity. And we always go back to it, not so particularly relevant now in the SIP world, but it used to be, a local number. If you're a local business, you had a local number. A lot of people still do that. So that's one of the key things. Teams Phone Mobile is about bringing that 07 number into the Teams environment. Tango Extend is all about taking that existing number and allowing people to using on a native mobile service, which it can be quite alien to some people. I can make and receive calls on my native mobile device using an 01, an 02, or an 03 number, but it's perfectly feasible. People are just not. It's that mindset. The other thing is to procure Teams Phone Mobile, you've got to go and speak directly to EE, to BT. Okay, so if you're a UK-based business, that's kind of fine. I can do that. But if you start talking to companies in different areas, okay, if I want it in the UK, I've got to go and speak to BT. If I want it in the US, I've got to go and speak to Verizon. If I want to get it in Germany, I've got to go and speak to Deutsche Telekom. So you end up in this situation where you're having to maintain all of these supply contracts in different regions. Obviously, one of the beauties of Tango Extend is that it can be procured from Pure IP alongside the fixed line alternative. So, I can come to Pure IP, I can say you're already supplying, or I want you to supply my fixed line numbers. Can you supply me a mobile service? So you get that single supplier, the single support wrap that you guys put around your services so well, a single invoice. One of the great advantages that we've introduced, and we did a large press release about this yesterday, was actually we're live in 4 countries at the moment. We're rolling that out to 14 in the next couple of months. You'll be able to use your service across any of those 14 and roam without any fear of getting additional charges. We're actually extending it further, so you can actually roam between 39 countries. So if you're a European-based business or a North American-based business, your workers can roam freely within 39 countries and not be fearful of attracting any roaming charges. And that's both for the voice aspect, but also it's a mobile service, so there's some data aspect there as well. So by having that differentiator, it's quite clear that you go back to that trusted supplier, that central. And don't get me wrong, Teams Phone Mobile, we work with Microsoft very, very closely on their mobile strategy. It's absolutely perfect for some use cases. And I say to some customers, I recommend you take Teams Phone Mobile for that use case. And we'll always do that. It's about finding the right solution for the right use case. But in this case, frontline workers, I'd say most people want to have that fixed line identity, but maintain that central controllability of Teams Phone.
Yeah, no, I think that's something we certainly see. I mean, that enterprise number, it does come with a certain prestige, and it's also, I think, depending on, as you rightly say, the use case, it's a little bit more cost effective to have, because you haven't got to have the big mobile package with it to go with which you would have to with the Teams Phone Mobile.
Yeah, exactly. And again, coming back to, you can share pricing with people, but, we've made sure that the Extend service is accessible, it's cost effective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, but before we move on to use cases, actually, because I want to pick up on that one in a minute, but we've had a question in, you mentioned countries there, and the question has come in from Ivan on the attendee list about Spain. So I don't know whether there's any guidance you can give him on Spain, and or what are the 4 countries that it's available in now?
The UK, you're going to test me now. I'm going to have to pull something up on the countries. So many countries. At the moment, we're available in the UK, the US, France, and Sweden. We're rolling out another 10 countries. The majority of those are across Europe. Please, you've got the countries, you're available for them. I'll look them up while Diana's talking. But you'll see us rolling those countries out, and Spain is involved in that. If you look at the maturity of the markets across Europe with regards to hosted telephony, Spain is one of those that's right up there. So absolutely, we'll be introducing service across Europe. I'll feverishly dig up the countries and see if I can find them in time before the end of the session. So
yeah,
but it's our ambition to take that further. We're already looking at countries further afield. We're looking at countries in Asia Pac, Australasia, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong. We want to get to the point where we can allow the users, your users as well, to roam pretty much around the globe as much as possible and freely as possible with a single subscription, a single bill, and no boundaries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Diana, we'll move on to the use cases, and I'll give Lee a bit of time now to go and see if he can find out any times on
Let's see if I can talk for long enough to give him the time.
I mean, we've already covered some of the use cases with the likes of manufacturing and retail and what have you. What I'd like to do for the audience is to just throw a few more out there, almost brainstorm a few some of those environments that these type of solutions we've discussed can work with. I mean, manufacturing is the obvious one. But I'm thinking also, I mean, you're thinking of hospitality in a lot of ways, sort of retail, any sort of mobile type environment where people need to be less tied to a desk. So have you got some thoughts around different use cases?
So definitely, as you said, in hospitality, in healthcare, in distribution, and like drivers and goods and stores, supermarkets, and so on. But also, like I said earlier, knowledge workers, like salespeople that are out and about and they just want to use their phone to make and receive calls. And like Lee said, they don't want to present their mobile number. Or maybe they do, but is that a convenient thing? It's probably
does the business want
something
to?
that the business definitely doesn't want that, because the business wants to, I guess I'm going to use the word control here, but I'm not sure if that's the right word, but they want to be aware of the calls that have been made and received. They want the customers to be able to call back that number and maybe call back in the evening or in the morning or over the weekend and be able to get through to somebody, even if it's not the person that the customer is used to talking to, but somebody will be available to help. Doctors. So I had an issue with my baby the other day, and I had the doctor calling me over the weekend, presenting his mobile number. I was like, can I call back? Well, how do I reach him back? Is he going to answer now? That's his mobile number? Is he going to answer if I have an emergency? What number do I call back now if my kid gets sick again? So I think even though this is how things used to be done, where people used to use their mobile number and present their mobile number because there wasn't a different solution, times have changed. There are different options now. So we can definitely use the business number and apply all those specific, business-specific rules that the company has for your landline. Like, are the calls recorded? Maybe they are. Are they monitored? Are there analytics or AI, like Lee said, that then kind of gets an idea, and the business gets an idea, how many calls do we actually get? How many calls do we actually make? And who's calling? At what time do we receive the calls? So they know how to run their business better. They know where they need more people. They know where to invest more time and more resources in. So definitely something that it's in the business interest to have the users using their landline number, making those calls when they're out and about, rather than their mobile number. Security also, I think you mentioned that, so we're not going to go there again.
I'd say, I mean, it does genuinely scare me in some use cases, and the one you gave about the doctor, Diana, it genuinely scares me. If somebody calls you on a mobile number, and that's the only number you've got to call them back, and you're calling back in an emergency, what happens? That doctor's off, he's on holiday, he's dealing with another emergency. What you want to do is to call back a number and somebody answers that. At least somebody answers that and recognizes that. I mean, other kind of scenarios are more of a customer service. Boiler engineer recently came out to me, phoned me on his mobile number, When he'd gone, the boiler wouldn't light. So I phoned him back on his mobile number, but he could have been on another job or something like that. Cheekily, he said, "Well, I'll pop round at the weekend and do it at a discount." So there's various things like that happen. But the health scenario genuinely does scare me. People, it could be an emergency, phoning somebody and not getting through to the right people.
And I think we all know, and you're both making a very valid point there. I think we all know that the business needs this insight, so they need to be able to take the analytics from these calls to know what calls are coming in, to be able to improve the service, to improve the experience. I mean, and sometime in the future, who knows? We may have AI doing the routing for us and the intelligence, so saying, actually, we know where you want to go, and here's the call back. But I do believe there's a huge advantage for having the corporate number represented from a brand perspective and a customer experience perspective. So I think there's a lot of mileage in that. So, and did I give you enough time there, Lee, to find your Spain information, or are we going to have to say
I've got the right list in front of me. So ask me the question again. So today we're in the US, UK, France, and Sweden. By the end of this half, is what we're saying. We're going to roll out to Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Mexico, Poland, Spain, and a couple of nice places, Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. We've also got our sights very firmly set on Switzerland and the Netherlands, but my engineering team haven't confirmed those for the time being.
Okay. So they're going to shoot
Spain
you
is very much there.
Well, I'm sure Ivan will be delighted then to hear that Spain is imminent, or very, very close to being there with us, which is great stuff. So thank you for the question, Ivan. So I mean, I think we've covered a lot of information here, and I don't want to just go over the same old ground for the case of for keeping the conversation going. But is there any sort of guidance or advice that you can offer people on the call for how they should consider approaching this, and also, what sort of use? I mean, we've talked about use cases, but that they're looking at their organizational profile. How do they start to get to this as being the right solution for them? What sort of guidance can you offer them?
I can start. So from my point of view, when working with customers, what I always recommend is discovery. Discovery is extremely important. Mm-hmm. Understand what it is configured out there, how it is configured, what you have installed, and most importantly, understand how people are using the system at the moment. Do they actually use it the way it is installed? Is it efficient for them? And then put that all together and try to think outside the box. Just because they're using their mobile phones at the moment doesn't mean that's the best solution. Is there a better one? Just because they have analog devices on their desks doesn't mean that is the best option for them, and let's just replace like for like, or just connect those into Teams. Is there a different option? Think outside the box. Is there something else available at the moment that can replace the existing solution and can make the user experience better and can make the customer experience way better too? I think that's my main advice.
And I would echo that, Diana. It's actually speak to the people in the roles. As you imagine, we've done a lot of research with this. We did a lot of research with Cavell, and we spoke to frontline workers, and we spoke to IT managers, and we spoke to C-suite. And there was a very conflicting communication from coming both into the spectrum. I think it was around 82% of frontline workers said that having the correct communication tools would give them job satisfaction, and just making their jobs easier. And then you go and speak to the C-suite, and they say, well, making sure that our employees are happier in their roles is key to our profitability. And so that's okay, guys. You're both agreeing that you want to be happy, in the roles and the right tools, but you've got to communicate with each other and ask people what are the best tools for them. What are they familiar with? What are they happy using? And again, it comes back to accessibility and scalability. But spend a bit of time. You may dictate policies to people and they just don't use them. There's some great research out. You can find publicly. Organizations have rolled out apps to people, over the top apps, and they kind of work. But the research firmly shows after 30 days, people just don't use them. They revert back to what they like doing. So it's spend a bit of time talking to people in the different roles, explaining the options to them, and try a few out. Let people try them and give you the feedback. But you've got to make sure that the communication that you've got on the discovery phase is as clear as possible.
Yeah, and I think as well, just to reiterate the point here, that we're not just talking about people making people happy and contented and giving them connectivity. It's a real business requirement in the fact that it's product connected to productivity, not just job satisfaction. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, because I'm talking about conversations that we've had. Some of the drivers that you're seeing for some of these is just purely based down to the fact of saving mobile costs in one instance, whereas others are down to the fact that they're looking at a real customer experience and a real sort of efficiency and productivity gains for the business by doing something within sort of the different sort of frontline worker environment. So it's a real business benefit. It's not just a fluffy, because sometimes I think when we start talking about making people happy and pleasing my workforce, it feels woolly, but actually there's a real business benefit to these solutions and approach.
Absolutely. Again, and it depends on the business. You do tend to find the smaller businesses do focus on the cost savings, and mobile is expensive, and it may be a corporately owned mobile, or people may be putting in expense claims. Even if they're putting in expense claims, you've got to process the claim, you've got to give them the money. So there's those hidden costs. The larger the organization, the more you can think about it. We're seeing a lot of RFPs coming out with green credentials now. How green is this company? How green is your response? You can't get greener than eSIM and getting rid of a mobile device. So, there's lots of benefits, and they do change on a different profile. But you tend to find the bigger the organization, there's more benefits, and it's not always cost. It's productivity, it's security, it's control, it's environmental gains.
Yeah, very, very valid point. Well, thank you very much, guys. I don't know whether there's anything. I'll give the audience to throw in a few questions if they want to. But I think we've probably come to a natural end of what we wanted to discuss today. So thank you very much for your time and your insights into this. In the absence of any further questions coming in the next sort of 30 seconds, I'd like to thank everybody on the call for attending as well. I hope it's been really useful. As I say, we're launching our sort of Tango Extend solution next week. It's going to be called Mobile Connect. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to find out more information, please get in touch with us. And also look out for the next series of Coffee Club Lives. Oh, we have a question come in. What does Pure IP's coverage in 137 countries and full PSTN replacement in 50 countries mean? Good question. So I mean, we can provide the full PSTN compliant replacement in 50 countries, of which you can find a list of those. I'm not going to do a Lee and try and name them all off here and now. And you can find those on our website. And then there's additional 137 countries where we provide some form of voice services. It may not be full compliant PSTN services, but we provide some sort of calling services. So when you look at the list that Lee ran off for the Mobile Connect and the Tango Extend product, they will fit quite nicely in 50 countries.
And it was added in the chat exactly what I wanted to add to Ian. So yes, PSTN replacement. By PSTN replacement, we mean exactly what Microsoft means. So inbound calling, outbound calling, caller line identity, emergency services support, in-country dialing, so special services, short numbers, and so on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Diana. Brilliant. Well, okay, as I say, thank you very much, Diana and Lee, for your time again. It's always insightful. I enjoy it. And I hope it's been useful for the delegates the attendees on the call. And thank you for your time as well, because I realize how precious it is. And I hope it's been useful for you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next Coffee Club. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.